So I'm going to pass over to my colleague Claire, who's going to do some introductions and start off the presentation.
Hello everyone, thank you Kia for taking us through all the housekeeping. I know we will have a few people who will join us as we go along, so we'll keep an eye on what's happening in the chat. But I just wanted to start by obviously saying welcome to everybody who's joined us this morning, and also a belated welcome to any of you who are watching this on repeat a little bit later on. The idea of the session today is for those of you who are holding offers, you may have accepted offers already, you may be still making your final decisions. We know that a lot of the questions that you have at the moment are around teaching and studying and what that might look like next year. And also for those of you who are perhaps thinking of moving to Edinburgh. We have lots of questions coming in on email and on our social media channels around accommodation. So what we thought we would do today was try to address those two main areas for you. So that is really what today's session is going to focus on, things around teaching and learning and also accommodation. I will be completely honest with you and say that we don't have all of the answers yet. Obviously, these are quite strange times that we're in at the moment, and the university is having to adapt as we go through. But we are making those changes and we are adapting. And what we wanted to do was to be able to share with you today what we do know. And also to point you towards more information and ways in which you can actually start connecting with other people who will be joining us in September and the rest of our academic community. So it will not just be me speaking to you today. We have a great lineup for you. Professor Colm Harmon, who is our Vice Principal for Students, is going to be speaking to you first of all around teaching and welcoming everybody to Edinburgh in September. And then we have Lyndsay Wilkie and Christopher Tucker from our Accommodation, Catering and Events team, who are going to focus very much on university accommodation. I will pop up again at the end with a few little bits and pieces about further information, and then we're going to have a question and answer session further on. You've already heard from Kia. So Kia is our undergraduate recruitment manager and in the wings and looking after any technical issues that we have, but I want to give them a shout out now. We've got Andrew and we've also got Keith who are there if anything crops up as we go through. So this is what we're going to try and cover for you today. We do just have an hour. So they will be fairly short and sharp presentations. In terms of questions and answers, thank you so much to everybody who sent in questions in advance. That has been really useful. We've already shared the questions that were submitted with the panel, and you might actually find we've tried to incorporate where we can answers to your questions into what we're going to say. But at the end of that, just so I try and make sure as many of those questions were covered as possible, I will bring up some of the questions that we perhaps haven't touched on to the panel, and then, as Kate said, if we've got time, we'll open it up to any further questions around teaching and around accommodation at the very end. So without wanting to take up any more time, I am first of all going to hand over to Professor Colm Harmon. Colm, I managed to find you what I hoped was a suitably socially distant picture of students studying for your section, but I'm sure everyone's very keen to hear what updates you have for us about teaching and learning next year. So I'll pass on to Colm now.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, everybody. Hey, and I hope that you can see and hear me. Yeah, that is kind of a sort of an austere picture of Edinburgh staring out a window. Not exactly what I think we'll end up seeing. So look, just a few things from me, just to really talk about plans for next semester and the year, and just to touch base on a couple of things that I know many of you are thinking about. So look, I mean, we know that the world is kind of weird right now and nothing feels normal, and even things that you're doing right now, like trying to see friends and family and just hang out over a normal summer, aren't kind of working the way you would normally work it. But all I would say is I want to say to start, you're living through an extraordinary period, and it's in real time, and everything is changing the world as we know it. So that's why I think coming to Edinburgh is kind of exciting. We've lived for over 430 years. I feel like I've lived for over 430 years in the last 6 months, but we've lived for over 430 years at this university, through the plague, political upheavals, world wars, and you name it. And we've always been at the center of creating and shaping responses to the way the world is. And that's our sort of job. It's shaping graduates who can deal with change and lead the way forward. And we've been doing it for a very long time, and it's our job, and we're really good at it. And we're in the world's top 20 according to the very latest survey. So you're talking about a place that is absolutely in the Premier League of institutions in the world, but is also deep in the heart of the big challenges the world faces, and is responding to a big challenge itself in terms of how it does its business. This is one of the biggest challenges we've ever faced, and it's probably worth recognizing that, whatever your intentions, that the university sector is having an extraordinary time, and you're, as students, are having an extraordinary time too. So we're, it's a little bit of a cliche to say we're sort of in it together, but we are, and we're really proud. Students from all over the world come to Edinburgh for what it stands for, a kind of an experience and a sense of belonging to a community of excellence. And that's what we want to do this year and every year. Because what makes us proud is sort of what you achieve, and we know those achievements are going to be great. So we're open in September. We're going to be ready on campus to do stuff, and we could talk a little bit more of that in the talks to come, and any questions you might have. In terms of teaching, look, it's going to be different. COVID has made us adapt the way we teach. There's some things that haven't changed. We view our students as an integral part of what we do. It's not like you're sort of just sitting at the other end of a lecture all the time. How we try and bring you into the community of the university is really part of the Edinburgh experience, and that's why we're delighted to be able to be open and having students with us. And that's our message, we'll see you in September. The community comes here from across Scotland, from all over the UK, and from over 160 countries, all over the globe, because of what we are. And that, that's a community that you'll have for life. We have alumni all over the globe, and in fact, when you start at the university, you join our online community called Platform One. So right from the start, you're going to be talking to students and graduates from all over the world, sharing advice and tips, and giving you the sort of guidance as a new student that you in turn will give as a new graduate in a few years' time, as part of this amazing club that we create every year as people graduate from the university. Teaching next year is in what we call a hybrid model. It'll be both digital and online. Really, the main constraint we operate is social distancing. That is effectively meaning that large lectures will be impossible for us to deliver. But we have a very substantive proportion of our teaching already in small groups. That's again part of the core way in which we do our business. So if you can think of it, big theatres get used for smaller classes. The classes rooms below that get used for smaller classes, and we sort of move everything into different spaces. And that gives us the opportunity to do a very substantive portion of our teaching face to face, and really tutorials and workshops and those kinds of seminars will be largely on campus. Labs are things that we're really working on to figure out how we do it in the most efficient way. And practicals or studio time, again, are things that the individual schools are really working hard to be creative around. We really do want you to have that experience of being on campus. And while some things are challenging, as I said, we're really working hard to deliver that. And it's changing all the time. We kind of have a sense of where things are right now with social distancing as currently described. If that shrinks as seems likely, but not certain right now, then what we can do on campus sort of expands. So we're working, this is a very dynamic situation, as Claire said, and we're working on that. When we do digital, it'll be great. We've been doing digital at Edinburgh for over 15 years, almost as old as some of you. And so we're going to be, we're good at it. We get amazing assessment for our digital teaching when we deliver it. And we're going to bring that experience to all of the digital content that we have to work with. And we know that some of you face constraints in coming here, travel constraints from other countries, or you may have illness issues or caring issues and so on that will create a challenge for things. And when we do, because of that, we're going to make sure that we can bring the teaching to you, sometimes in recordings, sometimes if we can in synchronous, in other words, real-time live delivery. What we're trying to do for students who can't be here is to make things seem as familiar as possible. You'll be working with your classmates on group projects, for example. So when you do get here, ideally over the course of the semester, but Siri is jumping in to tell me what I'm doing. You will then find things familiar. You'll find your classmates familiar, and you'll find the structure of what you're doing familiar. You're getting taught by amazing people, as I said, top 20 in the world in what we do, but they're also deeply involved in challenges, including COVID. And I think that's, that's a really critical thing for us. It's maybe something to think about in your thinking. We're a research-led institution. Our teaching reflects that. The content of our programs reflects that. We want to be part of that response, whether it's COVID or whether it's whatever issue that our schools and colleagues are working on. That's a big deal. And the value and respect of a degree gained from Edinburgh will not change. We worked incredibly hard with students who are just finishing the year when COVID hit. We're going to work incredibly hard with you. You're one of the most valued graduate courses in the job market, for example. That won't change at all. In fact, if anything, we're working flat out to make sure that that doesn't change, that everything is the way it should be. Finally, I'm going to say a little bit about social life. Look, I could give you lots of things that you could do on campus and what will be open and what won't be. That's changing all the time. You've been living with this. You don't need me to tell you how to have fun. And in fact, we're probably relying on you to show us how to do it. You'll teach the city how to have fun. And the city is coming back to life slowly. We're expecting to see greater release from lockdown. Lockdown release is a little slower in Scotland, and I think that's a good thing. The Scottish government is really working hard to eradicate the impact of COVID, and I think is succeeding. The sort of cases have collapsed and so on. So it's a cautious approach. Right now, September is a bit away, and we're expected to see a lot of normality in the city by that stage. You will have the norms of student life, societies and social events and sports. We have a great student union and sport union who are doing everything they can to reshape the year. Edinburgh, if you haven't been, is a beautiful, safe, small city full of green spaces, easy to get around, cycle, etc. And Scotland's fantastic. I'm a recent arrival. I'm Irish by birth. I've been in Australia for the last 7 years. And it's been an amazingly easy place to settle into and a safe place to settle into. And we're going to work really hard to keep that focus on safety at all times. So we can't predict the future, as Claire said. It'll be a bumpy ride at times. But as my boss, the principal, says, our pledge is to make it as normal as we can. And we might get it wrong from time to time. We want to be innovative and creative in what we do, because that's what a great university like Edinburgh does. So we're going to have you beside us as we do that. And I'm sure you'll be up for that challenge, because it is a challenge. So I really hope to see you soon. And I'm going to pass over to the rest of the team to talk you through some other elements. Great speaking to you this morning.
Hi everyone, and thank you, Colm, for setting the scene for us with that. And as you say, it is lovely to see the city starting to come back to life slowly, and hopefully we're now on the way towards some normality coming back. What I'm going to do now is pass on to my colleagues Lyndsay and Christopher from the University Accommodation team, who are going to talk to us a bit more about what accommodation is available, but also again what we're going to be doing in terms of building up our community, particularly within there. So I will let Lyndsay and Christopher take over the next section, and I'll then be back in a little while.
Thank you, Claire. Hi everybody, so my name's Lyndsay Wilkie. I'm the Director of Business Development for the university's Accommodation, Catering and Events department. You might also be able to hear that, like Colm, I'm not an Edinburgh or Scotland resident, and I'm from the Midlands but have lived in Edinburgh for a number of years and kind of agree with Colm. It truly is a lovely place to live, a very safe place to live, and I'm here a little bit to tell you a little bit more about the accommodation that the university has to offer for you. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time telling you about what's on offer, what the benefits of staying within university accommodation are. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about how you apply, and also to tell you a little bit about how COVID has changed things from an accommodation point of view, because we are living in uncertain times. So I want to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing around that. So firstly, what do we have? So the university has one of the biggest accommodation offerings in the UK. So we have over 10,000 bedrooms across Edinburgh. And because we have such a huge range of accommodation, we have a huge range of choice and price. We have catered and self-catered options. We have ensuite options and shared facilities. And you can live in the heart of Edinburgh or outside in quieter areas. So really a huge amount of choice depending on your preferences. We've also got an award-winning residence life and community support team that help our students when they're living in with us. And Christopher will tell you a little bit more about that in his session shortly. So I've told you a little bit about the range and type of accommodation we have, but I just wanted to tell you about some of the other benefits of living with the university. So as well as the choice and the locations we have, one of the key things that many of our students tell us that they like is that all the bills are included in your rent. So rather than staying in the private sector where you need to sort out your electricity, Wi-Fi and other services, especially at the moment when it's difficult to do that and to view other properties and get things sorted, all of the bills are included in your rent. So you pay one payment and everything else is sorted. So it's much easier to manage. You don't need to pay a deposit or you don't need to organise a reference. We're quite flexible in the way that you can pay for your accommodation as well. So there's lots of different options. You can either pay upfront or in instalments. All of our accommodation has free Wi-Fi and laundry facilities. And again, coming back to that residence life and community support team that are always there to help. So there's always somebody looking out for you when you're in our accommodation. One of the other questions that our students often ask us when thinking about accommodation is how much does it cost? So I just wanted to include some information, some very high level information about the price of our accommodation. And as you can see on the slides, accommodation prices range from around £4,700 at the cheapest to £10,200 at the most expensive. Now, this reflects the choices that you have. So, you know, catered accommodation, some of our catered accommodation is more expensive because you're obviously getting your meals included. And the difference in price very much relates to the size of your room, whether you're sharing facilities, the type of property and where it is. So it just goes to reflect that huge choice that you have, and there are price points to suit most budgets. I also wanted to tell you a little bit about the accommodation guarantee that the university offer. So if you are an undergraduate student studying for a full academic year and you apply by the 16th of August and you have an unconditional firm offer from the University of Edinburgh by the 30th of August, we will guarantee you a bed. So we promise we will find a bed for you. Now that doesn't mean that if you apply after the 16th of August that we won't. It's just that we don't guarantee after that. But this year we're trying to find as many students as we possibly can student accommodation with us. Also, usually under the guarantee, you don't get accommodation or you aren't guaranteed accommodation if you live inside Edinburgh. So you have certain EH postcodes. Again, this year, I would encourage all students to apply for accommodation because we are understanding the difficulties at the moment with regards to COVID and finding accommodation. So we are doing our best to help as many students as early as we can in the process. So I would encourage everybody to apply. You can apply now. So our applications are open and we've already helped just over 2,000 students with accommodation. And you can apply as soon as you have an offer from the university, whether that's an unconditional offer or a conditional offer. We only will send out an accommodation contract though when you have an unconditional offer from the university. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how you can apply and find out more information. So I'll share the website details with you slightly later in the presentation, but we've got a great website with lots of information and lots of details on all the properties you can choose from and the room types. What we ask you to do is visit that website, have a good look around. We've got a lot of videos on there from students that have made choices and have lived in our accommodation, and they'll tell you what it's like to do that, to live in certain places. And we ask you to choose 5 preferences. Now, they're not ranked in any order, so you don't choose your top one and then your second one. We just ask you to tell us what are your 5 favourites, and then we will allocate you or give you a bedroom in one of those 5. We'll do our best to do that. So I'd ask you to visit the website and have a look at what's available to you. So once you've got your offer, once you've had a good look at what your choices can be, and you've chosen your top 5, then you can apply via MyEd. And it's very simple. On the website, there's an apply now button, and it just takes you through the application process, which is very simple. And then one of the team will be in touch with you and about an accommodation offer, as long as you've already got that unconditional offer from the university. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the things that we've introduced as a result of COVID-19. These are uncertain times. We know that. We actually currently have over 4,000 students still living with us, and we've been looking after them in the lead up to lockdown and during lockdown. So we've got really good experience already of managing some of the situations around COVID-19. But we appreciate, and Colm mentioned in his presentation, that we might have certainly some international students that will be wanting to join us and will take out an accommodation contract with us, but there might still be travel restrictions in place in September. There might be issues around visas because of visa centres not being open. So we appreciate that some students might want to come and intend to come, but can't arrive at the beginning of their lease. So as long as you continue to be a matriculated student, and as long as you are intending to come at some point as soon as you can, then we'll do one of 2 things depending on how many bedrooms we have left at that point. We'll either hold your room for you and we won't charge you for the period that you're not with us, or we will release you from your accommodation lease and ask you to get back in touch with us when you know that you can come, and we'll try and find you a room then. So we are trying to be as flexible as we can, appreciating that some people physically might not be able to get to us despite wanting to. We also appreciate that there are some undergraduates that were intending to be on an exchange programme in semester 1 or a study abroad programme in semester 1, and now that might not be happening as a result of COVID, but there might be plans for them to be able to pick that back up in semester 2. So where that is the case, we will offer semester 1 contracts, which is something that we don't usually do, but in response to the situation this year, we'll be offering semester 1 contracts as well. And also we appreciate that at the moment there'll be the need for anybody joining the UK or coming from outside of the UK to the university to quarantine on entry into the UK. So I just wanted to provide some assurances that we will support students through this as well, and we're just working up the plans on what that will look like. So as well as the kind of contract and lease changes, we've also had to introduce enhanced hygiene measures across our campus. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what that might look like. We've been supporting students who've been self-isolating or quarantining by providing meals to them in their rooms where they're self-isolating, and again we would continue that into the new term. We will be introducing some physical distancing measures in our accommodation and catering spaces. So somebody asked a question before this, we still will be offering catered accommodation, and we will still be offering catering in semester 1. However, we'll be introducing measures, slightly longer catering times, slightly different locations, to make sure that people can be spread out and we can meet physical distancing requirements. We've made the decision not to offer twin rooms this year, again from a physical distancing perspective, and we've increased cleaning provision in our public areas. So all the places where there's lots of high touch points in public areas, we'll be doing more cleaning of those. All of our staff in accommodation and catering events are currently going through training on some of the new measures. So all the staff will be fully up to speed and able to help you when you arrive in understanding what these measures mean. And we're also making changes to what would usually be an arrivals weekend. So usually we'd have all 10,000 students arriving over the space of 2 days to their new accommodation. We'll actually be changing that this year to spread it out over a slightly longer period of time, again, just to help that transition into university and also into your accommodation, and also to make sure we can meet physical distancing requirements. So that's really a very high level view of some of the changes. We will be, if you decide to come and live with us, you receive a full induction into your accommodation, and there'll be much more information included on that as well. So that's a very quick run through of what's available to you and some of the changes as a result of COVID. The website that's on your screen on the slide at the moment has lots more information and is where you can see all the different choices available to you. It also has the contact information for the student allocations team, who will be more than happy to hear from you and answer any other questions you might have. So that's enough from me, I think. So I am going to hand over to Christopher Tucker, who's our Director of Residence Life, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the support that will be available to you when you come to live with us, and also a little bit more about the social side of things when you're living with us at university. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyndsay, and good morning and welcome virtually to the University of Edinburgh. I'd like to start off by saying I promise there are Scottish people up here. I am not one of them. Much like Colm, I relocated to Scotland last year, up from Brighton down in England. So I've had the similar experience of you looking at Edinburgh for a new home to start your education journey. I also have the added insight of my own 18-year-old is looking for a university to attend next year. So I'm attending these virtual sessions as a parent as well. So any questions around that? I know what the anxiety and the worries and the concerns are, so please feel free to ask as and when. So I just get a brief overview of res life, residential life, you know, what it is we do, who we are, and kind of, you know, what you can expect to at least some degree, you know, should you choose to come to university in September. You'll see this a lot in my slides when I talk about home, and I don't use that term lightly. This will be your home, and it will be the place that we share together. You know, you're going to be living communally, but it's really important aspect of life here is that we recognize that you will have you know, a home with your parents possibly, or a home with other relatives, but you know, we really are keen that you have a home here with us. So just a little bit of who we are, what we are. We are a living and learning experience. I mean, you spend probably 90 to 95% of your time outside of the classroom, and so we really look at the residences as a place to continue learning and learning about yourself and learning about others. So we want to make sure we create that sense of home that I spoke about. We do look at it as holistic personal development. You know, we are an evidence-based practice looking at student development theory of ways we can develop you as an individual. You can develop yourselves, and you can help us develop. You know, we are an educational setting, and that's the thing that we want as a continued effort to make a place where you feel comfortable learning and living. And then we'll talk a little bit about welfare interventions and advice that we can give when you're staying here with us. So as I said, we provide a home. It says away from home, but I would consider this your home when you arrive. We try to support your transition to university life in Edinburgh. We work with you towards creating an environment where you can grow to be really your best self, or the person that you want to become. And so through that effort, we're offering, you know, events, and we facilitate community building, and we'll really rely on your talents as well to engage in a lot of that activity. And then, as I said previously, we provide welfare interventions, and we signpost advise students on a daily basis. As Lyndsay was saying, you know, things might look a little different, and they most definitely will look different as you arrive in September. But I would stress we are currently fully operational. You know, we've been supporting, you know, 10,000 students since the middle of March. Everything from delivering meals to those in self-isolation, to providing remote welfare assessments and interventions. So, you know, if we were to start tomorrow, I feel confident that we could run our our activities as we have been for the last 2 months. Now, we will be looking to provide a mixed model of social interaction. So even once social distancing requirements decrease, or if they decrease, We understand that people may have certain anxieties around shielding. They might have certain anxieties just about being worried about being in larger groups. And so we are looking at a mixed model and having some remote offers for students who would like to attend events remotely, but feel unsure about attending physically. So we were going to look at a range of creative ways that we can deliver that. And really, we want to make sure we've created a community and we hold on to that community. And this is something I think we've been really successful at in the last two and a half months. As was said previously, we still have around 4,000 students living with us. We're still creating that community, and I'll give you examples of that in a little bit. We're also looking at Arrivals Week versus a weekend. That will be a staged function. You'll be giving a time slot, a time period to move in. We're going to try to make it as paperless as possible and seamless as possible. One entry, get your keys, go to your room. Have some one-way entrances and exits. And following the social distancing guidelines. But through all that, really what's important is that we build a community and you get to know not only your neighbors, but students across the university. So that's our RA student staff. I used to be a residential assistant. It was a very long time ago. The 90s were still a thing. Yeah, so these are our students, and the students with extra training, they're second, third year postgrad students that have volunteered to become a part of the community again. They live with you in the accommodation. They're trained to help. They're going to do things like peer mediation. So when you get in a slight debate about who licked my cheese, they will be there to step in and help you navigate some of those communal living aspects that will inevitably come up. But trained to help and really just to promote, kind of a balanced lifestyle and get you guys integrated within the university. But really, they're the bedrock to what we do, and they are the ones that live with you and help, let us know when you're struggling or when you have issues where we need to kind of address a more kind of communal response to different living situations, and really just to provide a listening ear and someone a friendly voice. Often it's easier to speak to someone who's around your age other than someone who's a little bit older like me. So that'll be your residential assistant staff, and they will be there to greet you on arrivals. And that's our wellness wheel. So I mentioned student development theory earlier, and that's really the underpinnings of our service. So we looked at a holistic learning environment. And so we look at things around emotional, environmental, financial, intellectual, occupational, physical, social, and spiritual. And these are all different types of social programs that we run alongside partners, both internally and externally to the university. Now, most of you will not have a problem when you come to university. You'll sail through and very little hiccups or rocks on your way. But if you do find yourself struggling, within the Residence Life team, we have 24-hour urgent support, both between the Res Life team and the community support team. And the community support team are there 24 hours a day as well. We will have two residential life mental health coordinators on hand. Again, for those that are particular struggles. We are still performing remote welfare assessments. In fact, we are leading the sector in putting guidelines around remote welfare assessments. We are doing some in-person support for certain cases, and really, it's just to say it's a seamless level of support between ourselves, counseling, disability, chaplaincy. We are one team that works together to help provide you support. So we will join up and work as a team to engage in any contact that you need when it comes to welfare support or advice. And then, as Lyndsay said, and I said earlier, we have been doing meal deliveries for students who are isolated or under quarantine, and we've become very proficient at that over the last few months. So again, we feel prepared to start should the academic year start, tomorrow or the next day. So I'll just give you a few examples of some of the programs we've run in the past and some of the ways we might address those going forward in some of the different categories. In the emotional category, we'd be really looking at self-care, well-being, stress reduction, relaxation. There's a photo of massage there. Obviously, that may not be available until social distancing is relaxed. But yeah, there's a small photo in the top right-hand corner, and that's our pet therapy day, or our petting day that we have with students, and that's something that we'll still be able to offer once social distancing requirements are a little bit more relaxed up here in Scotland. But we're looking at things as well. You'll see an alpaca. We have alpacas on campus. Again, it's to get you out of the room and engage, and there's some evidence to suggest that can relieve anxiety and stress. Okay, the next area is intellectual, and just talking about, we really try to be creative. We're still running wine and cheese lectures remotely, having guest speakers in. We've got reading groups, and we're also looking at to do small pop-up academic conferences within the residents, so that we can utilize some of your experience and your academic side of the university, and bring in some of your interests, and maybe expose those to students that are studying other projects. And then we've got occupational, and we work quite closely with careers and employability. We've just done some work with them and the postgraduate students who are entering into the workforce. We're also going to really focus on volunteering and community work. We want to look at places we can give back to the local community here in Edinburgh. And so that's going to be a real focus of our attention this year, is how we can engage with local community projects. And some of that will lead into your professional development and employability. And then really, and I think this is what many of you are wondering about, is the social aspect of that. We are still having the social aspect, although it is remote at the moment. We are having your Zoom, your Netflix parties, your house party apps, and not actual house parties, mind you, but for those of you who know about the house party apps, I'm still learning about all these new apps. So we are exploring and researching and seeing what works. So we'll definitely include you and the input on that, so that we can kind of carry forward and be more and more creative as far as our remote social engagement. We do have advice online drop-ins as well for students, like if they'd like a one-to-one session with someone on our team. And really, all of this is for the intention to create a home for you and your fellow residents. And then the last one I really focus on is the spiritual. And that doesn't mean religious. We're looking at mindfulness. It could mean religious if that's something that you'd like to explore, and we'd like to engage with with your flatmates and other students. But really, it's about discovering values and beliefs, and structured exploration and debate. Is meeting people from different backgrounds and cultures and engaging with them in a really constructive manner. Now, these are just some of the events that we're actually doing right now, and I'll give you the link to our Residence Life Facebook page. I know Facebook page was something you escaped because your parents took it over, but I know a lot of students are back engaged with with Facebook at the moment, so we are back on there, running a number of events. We've got our virtual office hours. We've got a cooking show on Friday nights run by one of my team. He gives you the recipe a few days in advance, and on Friday night he helps show you how to have the best way to cook it. We're having virtual pub quizzes. Alongside of that, some of the other content we have is virtual game nights. We've had an online iftar party. So we've had a number of events already, and we're trying to be more and more creative, and we're actually engaging with the sector to ensure that we kind of have the most up-to-date approaches and the most interesting and creative programs that we can kind of deliver you either remotely or in person. So that's all I have to say for you. I thought there's one more slide somewhere in here that will have my our details as far as the Facebook pages, our Twitter account, and our other social media aspects. I would encourage you to click on that link and go there. We're there, and we're waiting to engage with you. Students who are allocated to our accommodation will start reaching out to you within the next month, and we'll try to start building those communities now. So we'll start introducing you to the people you'll be living with, through social media, and really trying to engage in and build up and keep you informed and communicate with you as we understand things change and changes, then we can let you know what to expect coming into university. So that's all I had to say to you. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing those of you who choose University of Edinburgh in September.
Hi everyone, and thank you Lyndsay and thank you Christopher for taking us through all the things that have been happening in our accommodation. And you can see there from as Chris was saying and Lyndsay, what we've already learnt from having our students with us over the summer so far, and obviously all the plans that we have going forward for September, which is great. There were a lot of questions around accommodation and around some of the practicalities, and I know I can see that that's been fed into what you have presented to us this morning. So thank you very much for doing that. Just before we move on to some of the questions, I just wanted to highlight a couple of useful resources for you. So Christopher, if you have more links and things, we're very happy to add those in and send those out in a little while. So just a few things for you to have a look at. then you can not only find out a little bit more about some of these things, but also actually start to connect again as part of that community. So one of the ones, and apologies, it is just a quick screen grab just to try and give you an idea of what's there. One of the resources, if you haven't found it already, that we would really suggest you look at is the New Student website. Has lots of great hints and tips about getting ready for university, preparing, all the sort of updates that we have on there as well. So it's a really good resource to start with. It also has the link to the New Students Facebook page, and this is a great way, again, just to start connecting with people who are in the same boat as yourself, who are joining through in September. Lots of frequently asked questions on there, lots of news updates coming through on there as well. So as Christopher says, you know, I know Facebook may be something that you're used to your parents using, but it is very, very useful, and that's where we're getting a lot of questions coming through, and a lot of people starting to build up that community in there already. So that is a really good resource, and I'll put the full link on for you in a second. I would also sort of say, coming through from the questions, there were quite a few questions specifically around Welcome Week. And you'll have seen from the New Students website that there is a particular link on there. So what I've got up here is just a few key points that have come from that website, so you can go and have a look yourself later on. Now, on the website, it does say this is when Welcome Week is going to be. Now, we are very aware, and again, as Colm mentioned before, that not necessarily everybody is going to be able to join us right at the beginning of what would have been Welcome Week, or the weekend that everyone normally would arrive. We're aware that this year it's likely to be a phased process, but teaching is going to start on the 21st of September, so we will have a programme of activities happening through that week for those who are able to join us in Edinburgh, and also there will be things online for those who are doing this a little bit more remotely. We don't have the full programme available yet. That will go live probably just a few weeks beforehand. It will all be confirmed in midsummer. But what we can say is include, as usual, really important induction events for your school, or so for your academic area, so that you can get to know the people who will be teaching you, to know the people who will be studying alongside you, make sure you're properly sort of, you know, registered and you've got all your courses sorted out. So all those really essential things will still be there and will still be happening. But there will also be general welcome events, social events. Some of them, as Christopher has suggested, might be virtual, but there will be ways. We're working really, really hard to build that community and to make sure that you all feel part of it. Some of the normal social things may not be happening, but we will make sure that there are lots of ways that you can connect with other people as you go through. So that New Student website is up on there at the moment, along with the Facebook group. Remember that all of these slides are being sent out with the recording, so you can always go back and check up on these again. Again, coming through in the questions, there were some very specific questions coming through, quite understandably, about particular courses or options that you might be able to take later on in your degrees. And so one of the things I would really encourage you to look at, again, if you haven't already found them, are some of the offer holder hubs or websites which are there for your particular subject areas. So we have 3 colleges at the university: the College of Arts, Humanities and Social Science, College of Medicine and Veterinary Medicine, and the College of Science and Engineering. And there is a wealth of information up on there, so that you can go through. You can again start to connect with your academic school. You can actually ask some of those questions directly there if you do need a little bit more detail about particularly course information. There's a huge amount there, lots of frequently asked questions, some great videos in there as well. So that is a really good resource to be using. And the last one, just to flag up now, is our sort of general update, sort of news site, if you like, with everything around COVID-19. And this has a lot of really good FAQs, including a lot of the things about admissions. We did say today we weren't really going to be able to touch on admissions. That would be a whole webinar on its own. But a lot of the FAQs are dealt with on that website. So again, that's a really good place to go. And if you can't get your answer there, again, there are contact details there where you can send things in. So that's just to make sure you know where to go from here today if we're not able to cover absolutely everything. So what I'm going to do now, we've got about 10 minutes or so. We're just going to go through maybe a couple of the questions that were sent in advance, because we do really appreciate you having done that. In the background, I think Kay might put us on so we can see all of our faces. But in terms of, I'll give Colm the heads up. I think I might start with one or two of the teaching and sort of learning questions that came. There were a lot of them, and we have covered a lot of what was in there. But there was one question in particular which I thought was very interesting, which we may not have all the answers yet, but which was actually around ways in which we're trying to make sure that the new students who are coming up are perhaps able to connect with the returning students, and are the ways that we're thinking about doing that. I appreciate you may not have all the answers to that, Colm, but I just thought that was an interesting one, that community is important as well. It's not just about the new students who are coming. How do they help to build those other relationships?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, there's several ways. One is, we want to make sure platform one, which is sort of perceived sometimes as an alumni group, but actually it links current students to current students, as well as to past students who've gone on to other things. So there's a kind of a mechanism for doing that, where we'll be putting in place more direct kind of peer-to-peer and kind of buddy systems as well, to sort of link students from later years of a particular degree to students who may be just starting. And also it's why the sort of the on-campus message is sort of is important to us, that the things that we'll certainly be working hard to do is around creating connections. We've had I think it's an important project that we've been leading at the university called Sense of Belonging, and we've taken very seriously as an institution the idea that belonging is an important piece of the puzzle of being at university. So there's the sort of education piece and the social dimension, but as I said, you are part of a community of academics, even at kind of very junior level. And I think that sense of belonging is something we've taken very seriously. So yeah, there will be kind of a combination of new and improved things that we've always done, and enhancing that with new connections that may be more digital.
That's great. And I think, Christopher, I guess in terms of, again, that connection between the new students and students who are already here, again, the accommodation is a good way with our resident assistants, and ways in which those communities can be built up there as well.
Yeah, no, I think uniquely this year we're going to have a number of second and third year students living with us. So some of that will be quite easy to do, as in years past there might have been a bit more separation. But we'll have a very mixed community, and many of our wardens who lived in maybe a education in a long time ago, they kind of have commented, back in the early days, you used to live in a very mixed group of academics, students that are studying together. So you might have postgrads living with undergrads, living the second years and third years, and all of them said there's a really nice learning environment. And so we'll be encouraging a lot of that.
That's great. With the teaching questions, and again, in terms of details, we may not have it all, but one of the questions that was coming through is actually we mentioned having a lot of our large lectures. Obviously, we can't have 300, 500 people in lecture theatre at this point. So one of the very practical questions actually was, where are we imagining students will be watching these online lectures? Are they in accommodation? Are there other spaces where they might be able to watch the lectures online if they don't have that sort of IT facility at home?
Oh, well, there's lots of things in that. And one thing we kind of want to avoid is that people will be sitting in halls, lovely as they are, Lyndsay. We don't want to be them sitting there, because people will be moving We call it a hybrid model because they're like you'll be moving between modes, and indeed even over the semester we're likely to see changes in social distancing rules, which may mean that more things happen on campus. So I think a couple of things, to give a sense of the problem we have, so people can kind of think about it, and this is true in every university. We have a 500 seat lecture theatre that, if we apply the rules, we can fit fewer than 20 people into. So the problem is a huge one. It's different for different kind of rooms, but we're sort of expecting kind of that most things in or around the 40 student mark will actually happen on campus, and that's actually an awful lot of our teaching. That's a lot of our classes are designed to be small. That's the sort of Edinburgh approach, and I think whereas big classes are clearly out, we will see other things happening on campus, and that will change, I think, over the course of the semester too, the semester as well, not semester two. I think the other question around one of the things we're trying to do with space is make sure that we have study space and rooms on campus. The students may have a class, they don't want to be shooting back to halls to make sure they have good broadband or something, but rather we want to make sure there'll be spaces on campus that they'll be able to watch classes. We may find issues where students are, for example, have a lecture in one of our other campuses, and rather than traveling back to the city, they'll go to a space there on King's Building and participate in a class that way. So there'll be a bit of a, it's sort of all the design work is going on right now for that. We're trying to minimize movements of people around the campus between different sites. So that's kind of forcing some changes in how we do things. And I think if we, as we work through all these kind of issues, we'll help. As I said in my intro, we'll also be working through these things with you. I keep saying to my academic colleagues, I'd rather, we tried hard and occasionally got it wrong than just, for example, do everything online, which would be much easier. That's not what we're intending to do. And we're really working in lockstep with the recommendations of government, so that we know we'll see lockdown lifting, we'll know we'll see COVID suppressed. That's the way we're approaching things. We're not working on there being different models. We're working on one model, which is we have one cohort of students, that's all of you. Some of you may not be able to join us, but you will. We progress from there. Of course, if we had a shock or something, we would deal with that. And Lyndsay has already talked about the kind of protocols that we've put in place for this year's class that we'll carry forward into next year's class. But really the vision for the campus is here progressively improving in lockstep with the city and with the country as a whole. And I think we're still 3 months away from everything being real. But right now we're working off what we know, and what we know is a constraining environment for sure. And that's one that we hope will improve. But even still, we'll still see a lot of activity on campus, and we'll be making sure that we have facilities for people to participate. One thing I want to say is that people may be worried about the costs and having to get equipment and broadband. And again, we're working very hard on that. We have a laptop loan scheme that we currently have. We had something like 80 laptops, so we're working on having hundreds available on a loan system for students who may find challenges in that space. So even where there are constraints, I think it's important that you don't worry about those things too much right now. We'll deal with those realities with you when you're here.
That's great, and that again actually covers quite a lot of the things that were coming up around group teaching and also around IT provisions. They were a couple of the questions that were in there. Just maybe before I move into opening the questions up, there was one question which kind of straddles a little bit teaching and accommodation in a way. Which was around if a student, for example, started off first semester and they were largely online, could they then move to being on campus later on? So it's that if they had to transition, I guess, and they started out being online, and then in semester 2, they were then transitioning hopefully to be on campus. And how would that work as well in terms of accommodation? So A, could they do it? And B, if they did it and they wanted accommodation, would they have to pay for this semester's accommodation in order to save a space for semester 2? So it's that sort of, as you say, that transition and how that might happen for somebody.
Maybe I'll let Lyndsay kick off.
Yeah, I can go from the accommodation point of view. So if you can't come in semester 1, but you want to come in semester 2, then we won't charge you for holding you your room. If we can hold your room for you because we don't have a big waiting list of people wanting a bedroom, then we will. If we've got a big waiting list, so somebody could take your room in semester 1, then we'll release you from your lease, and we would then look at getting you something in semester 2. And to give people comfort, we always have a mix of semester 1 and semester 2 students, and we always do semester 2 and semester 1 contracts. So it's from our visiting students' perspective, so it's nothing new from that point of view. But you won't be charged for a period of time that you're not in your room if you can't get here. Yeah. So Colm, I don't know whether you can pick up the other piece.
Yeah, I mean, and from our point of view, as I said, the whole design of what we're doing is that we wanted to recognize that challenge, that some people will be constrained in being here, but will join us, you know, perhaps after 14 days of quarantine, if that's still in place, or perhaps even a little later, because, you know, flights could be very difficult and initially to get here, but maybe more easy over the semester. I mean, the expectation is that, you know, teaching will become more kind of normal, i.e. kind of fully on campus, with less emphasis on the hybrid model for semester 2. We're not intending on this being our kind of mode of operation forever, but we are two things really. One is that we are, you know, beholden to realities of the world from a health and safety point of view, so we may see issues that we have to deal with. And secondly is that we may actually quite like this way of teaching. I think there's a lot of attraction for students in being able to deal with this, and I think colleagues who are designing courses, you know, quite like this idea of blending digital and on-campus content to give more flexibility in how we deliver and to give students more flexibility in how they receive classes. So semester 2 feels a long way away right now, but we will be thinking about those issues as we go, and certainly, as Lyndsay said, we'll have the flexibility of dealing with that from the realities of life point of view.
Thank you both, and I am conscious of time. There was just one sort of area, particularly around accommodation, which is just reassurance, I think, Lyndsay. There were a couple of people who were saying, you know, am I at a disadvantage? I haven't applied for accommodation yet. I might not have my results until July or August. Will I be at disadvantage in terms of getting the accommodation that I want?
No, not at all. So we don't allocate on a first come first served basis. So whether you applied with us for accommodation in May when we opened applications, or you apply right at the last minute in August, then you will stand exactly the same chance of getting one of your 5 accommodation preferences. We run our model in a way that makes it fair throughout the year, throughout the application process rather. So you're not at a disadvantage if you apply a bit later in the process when you're waiting for exam results.
Thank you guys very much. We have just about run out of time. I don't know if people want to, are you able to hang on for 2 minutes if we open up for questions? So we'll just very quickly, I'll let Kay take over and explain how we'll do questions, and then we'll maybe just have 5 minutes of questions from the floor, because I think most of what have been submitted has already been there, and I'll let Kay explain how that works if people are able to stay just for an extra 5 minutes or so.
Hi there, folks. Yes, so what I'll do is I'll just bring the last slide up just as a quick reminder on how to ask a question. If you have got a question just now, if you could raise your hand and use the little icon just down the bottom, and if you could start typing your chat in your question into the chat box. Isabel, first person to put their hand up, that would be great. And then we can ask your question to the panel. If anybody else has a question, please do raise your hand just now. Isabel asks, with relation to accommodation and shared bathroom accommodation, will that still be available? Lyndsay, that might be one for you.
Yeah, so I'm just reading your question again. Yes, it will be available, Isabel. So the only thing that we're doing is removing twin rooms. All of our other types of accommodation will be available. We will be following public health and government guidelines around our accommodation. However, I suppose if you think about when you move into your accommodation and your flat with your flatmates, then you almost become a family, like you are. I'm sure most of you, or some of you, are living with your families now and sharing sort of bathroom facilities. So that's our stance at the moment, and that's how we're approaching things. So, yep, shared facilities will still be available apart from twinned rooms.
That's great, thanks, Lyndsay. Calliope, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. If you want to put your question into the chat box, if anybody else has any other questions, last final questions, please do raise your hand. Jenna has asked a question: is there some kind of reliable therapy program on campus? So that's maybe a question for Christopher.
Yeah, not therapy as you would know it as you go sit in a room and have clinical therapy. We're non-clinical approach. We do provide crisis intervention and welfare support, advice giving. We'll have really informal sessions with our mental health coordinator. But really we would be signposting you or referring you over to the counselling team and or our other colleagues in chaplaincy and disability. So no formal therapy of any kind, but we do sessions around personal welfare assessments, making sure that you can keep yourself safe and that you can your well-being's good, and there's things that you could do to improve your overall mental health.
Maybe I would just jump in as well and say that we'd just before COVID hit, we were just about to open our new student kind of wellness sort of center, which we've invested a lot in right in the center of campus to do that. And one of the things that we'll be continuing to invest is in recruiting more mental health counselors into that team. So as a kind of a bolstering effect. So I think well-being was a big focus of attention in student experience team, which I lead, to sort of over the next kind of 2 to 3 years. We're making a big investment in that area, and we'll make it even bigger one, I think, now, given the sort of challenges we particularly face. We're very aware of the issues that students are facing, and we had made that investment and we'll continue to make that investment.
That's great, Colm and Christopher, thanks very much. We have a question in from Calliope about facilities that they can have in the catered halls. We've also got a question coming in from Dan. Shannon and Louisa, you've got your hand raised. If you want to ask your questions in the chat just now, and we will try and answer the questions. We might not have any time for any other questions. Lyndsay, if you want to take Calliope's question.
Yeah, I think that was around catered halls and bringing in things to help you cook. So firstly, I'd say hopefully you won't need to do that because our catered halls, the catering we provide is really good. I can vouch for it personally because our offices are just round the corner and we get to dive in occasionally and give it a try. So I can vouch for it. I wouldn't recommend you bring in a little stove yourself. However, our catered accommodation have pantry areas, and there are microwaves and fridges and facilities like that. So whilst you're in catered halls, there still is an element of you being able to cook and provide for yourself as well outside of that. So there shouldn't be a need for you to bring things in. Everything that you need should be there for you. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, and Lyndsay, there's another question in just from Dan about allocations, and normally allocations are kind of random between courses. Is that going to stay the same, or is it going to change due to coronavirus?
No, at the moment, and I suppose this goes back to kind of community building. We don't plan to change how we allocate rooms. So at the moment, we don't take into account sort of your courses. The only thing that we look at is around your gender and your age. But other than that, we won't be doing anything around putting people in blocks with people from their courses only. That's not the plan.
Lyndsay, can I just add, because I do know, I am aware that some of the universities in the sector are housing by program. I think there's a few different ways to look at that. I think one of our kind of models is really so that we integrate as many different types of people together as possible, so that we kind of learn and grow together. So although I'm aware that that is an approach many universities are taking at the moment, it's just our view that you kind of gain more by really having that cross interaction between people, studying different things, doing different things, being from different backgrounds. And so we'll really try to encourage that. At the same time, you'll have many opportunities within your schools to engage with your academic community.
Yeah, and I think just a long time ago since I was at university, but I know I lived with people that weren't on my course, so I had the opportunity to make a lot more friends by being mixed with people that didn't do my course, and then going to study with people that we were studying the same subject with. So I think it just helps with widening your social circle and meeting new people. So that's with Christopher's comments, that's why we're not intending to change that model.
That's great, thanks very much. Probably the last question for Colm from Shannon. Will face-to-face lab and practicals go ahead in semester 1?
Yes, hi Shannon. I mean, some will. We're kind of ironing out the details right now. We have to deal with social distancing issues in labs as well. So the format of lab sessions will change, but colleagues in the relevant school will be closer to being able to kind of give a direct answer on that question right now. The sort of teaching designs for next year are starting to sort of lock in, and we have been experimenting a little bit with sort of virtual labs and so on, but they're not as useful as they as being in a kind of full lab. So there's a kind of this face-to-face lab, and then there's kind of digital lab or simulated lab sessions, and then there's a couple of other ways that the colleagues in the science disciplines are trying to deal with things. I'll just finish also maybe with Katie about socializing events at start semester will be virtual. No, not all. We are working on in a kind of a clear phasing here under Scottish government regulations. The next lifting likely to be this week, where we will see social events for the population as a whole starting to kind of creep in, shops starting to open and those kinds of things. So there's no question that some of what we will do at the start of the semester will be on campus without a doubt.
That is brilliant. Thank you all so much for joining us, those who were able to come. A big thank you to Colm and Lyndsay and Christopher for sharing the updates and what we know so far about September. We will be keeping up to date, as I mentioned before. The New Students website and the New Students Facebook will be there as well. There are staff on there. Occasionally we see Colm and people answering questions on the Facebook chat as well. So we will try and keep in touch with you and keep you updated as much as we possibly can over the summer as it comes through. If you do have further questions, then we did obviously have an email address on the email that's been sent out for this, but there's lots of contact details as well on the website. So do please get in touch if there's something that we can help you with, or if there's a query that you've got on from there. So thank you for joining us, and we hope that many of you will also be joining us in September, and we're really looking forward to welcoming you properly to Edinburgh then. So thanks again for everyone who's been part of today.